Peace and love. Peace and love, everyone. It is your girl, Empress ShayMarie, back for another video. So I basically done made this into like a marathon, guys. This book is so good and interesting and informative and all of the above. Let's check out the comments. And so I definitely wanted to come on and share more of the book today. Grand Rising, Mother Vicky. Grand Rising, Edgar Evans. Gratitude to you as well. Thank you for tuning in. We have Tatum's mobile notary service. Okay, I might need to holler at you. Welcome to the group. Welcome to today's live reading. We're going to be continuing on from chapter 5, possibly doing chapter 6 of the 0%. Continuing on this amazing book. So make sure y'all hit the like button as y'all come in. Appreciate all of you all. Peace and love, and thank you for your content. Thank you as well. Thank you for your support. And like I said, I definitely need to contact you, Tatum Modem, because we definitely need some notaries in my community, and especially for myself. So that will definitely come in handy. And it's a good thing that you are mobile. I don't know if you travel, or also, can you let me know in the chat if you are e-notary? Can you do like e-notary service as well? I have one person who's already registered in their state, but they're getting ready to register in, I believe they said Pennsylvania, where they'll be able to do the e-notary service. But until that happens, I need to be able to get my hand on a notary as soon as possible. So make sure y'all, like I said, hit the like button, share this video out to all your friends, families, and loved ones. As we continue waking the people up, waking up the world, and shaking things up, and reclaiming back our inheritance. I'm gonna get started at 5 after. So I'm just allowing a few people to hop on. Grand Rising, peace and love. Mr. Somebody, what's going on with you? Hope all is well. I would appreciate that. I'm working on getting my e-notary. Okay, so that I can do all over the site. Okay, cool. Okay, so we got another person as well that's doing that as well. So cool. Awesome. So we got one more minute before I go ahead and get into this book. Make sure y'all share this out. Bring more people into the room. Bring more people into the room. And let me make sure y'all, I know y'all can hear me, so I'm not worried about that. Okay, one moment. Okay. All right, 10 seconds left. Let's get it started. So let me get over here to this book. And of course, we're reading the 0%, picking up on chapter 5, Eradicating Public Debt. So it says, most would argue whether or not there is lawful money circulating in today's economic system. In 1933, the United States Corporation asked the people to turn in all of their gold and silver and give it to the U.S. Treasury. The U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5 states, to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and of foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures. And Section 10, Clause 1 reads, no state shall enter into any treaty alliance, or confederation grant letters of marque or reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payments of debts. The Treasury, permitted by the Constitution, is only allowed to issue precious metals and gold and silver coins as tender of payment. In the year 2021, gold and silver coins are not issued by banks or traded in any market as a form of payment for services, but instead the United States circulates Federal Reserve notes, better known as cash or fiat. Okay. Fiat paper. All fiat paper printed from 1933 and beyond has the special language stating this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. It would make sense that due to the confiscation of all gold and silver and circulating fiat currency, the Treasury has all lawful money. For the people to have this lawful money, the people must use the Treasury to get it. Lawful money cancels out public debt created by interest applied on negotiable instruments. Gold and silver is a fixed weight of value and therefore not negotiable, such as Federal Reserve notes. There are two sides to the dollar bill, a public and a private side to the Federal Reserve note. Before 1933, all paper bills displayed a different language than all 1933 and beyond paper bills. With any search engine, there are images of lawful money of the United States. There are bills in the images, such as a $5 bill issued in 1928, which was redeemable in gold demand at the United States Treasury, or in gold or lawful money at the Federal Reserve Bank. This wording comes from Title 12, Banks and Banking, Chapter 3, Federal Reserve System, Subchapter 12, Federal Reserve Notes, Section, maybe that's not 12, that's 17, Chapter 17, Subsection 411. In July of 1933, the Columbus Dental Manufacturing Company submitted an application to the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland in the amount of 10 grand worth of precious metals. The bank approved the application in just one day of submitting the application, acquiring 476.92 ounces of gold and valued at $9,867.14. In the depths of the Great Depression, anyone would question why was the Cleveland Fed supplying gold to an unsuccessful firm rather than supplying gold coins and gold-backed currency to banks. Does the Federal Reserve supply gold to any businesses today? The answer to these questions revolves around President Roosevelt's gold program, which began in 1933. It first restricted the private use of gold, requiring businesses like Columbus to apply to the Fed for precious metals. The Gold Reserve Act of 1934 was signed by President Roosevelt in January of 1934, which transferred ownership of all precious metals in the U.S. to the Treasury. According to Section 2 of the Act, monetary gold included all coins and bullion held by individuals and institutions, including the Federal Reserve. In return, the individuals and institutions receive currency at a rate of $35 per ounce of gold. This rate reduced the gold value of the dollar to 59% of the value set by the Gold Act of 1900, which equaled $20.67 per ounce. That rate had prevailed until the spring of 1933, when Roosevelt administration began its campaign to devalue the dollar. The Glass-Steagall Act effectively separated commercial banks from the process of investment banking and created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, among other public programs. It was one of the most debated legislative initiatives with that President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed into law in June 1933. According to the Federal Reserve history, in the wake of the 1929 stock market crash and the Great Depression, Congress was concerned that commercial banking operations and the payment systems were incurring losses from highly volatile equity markets. An important motivation for the act was the desire to restrict the use of bank credit for speculation and direct bank credit into what Glass and others thought to be more productive uses, such as industry, commerce, and agriculture. In response to these concerns, the main provisions of the Banking Act of 1933 effectively separated commercial banking from investment banking. Senator Glass was the driving force behind this provision. Commercial banks, which took in deposits and made loans, were no longer allowed to underwrite or deal in securities, while investment banks, which underwrote and managed securities, were no longer allowed to have close connections to commercial banks, such as overlapping directorships or common ownership. Another relevant provision of the Act created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, which insures bank deposits with a pool of money collected from banks. This provision was the most controversial at the time and drew veto threats from President Roosevelt. It was included at Stegall's insistence, who had the interest of small rural banks in mind. Small rural banks and their representatives were the leading proponents of deposit insurance. Opposition came from large banks that believed they would end up subsidizing small banks. Past attempts by states to install deposit insurance had been unsuccessful because of moral hazard and because local banks were not diversified. After the bank holiday, the public showed vast support for insurance, partly hoping to recover some of the losses and partly because many blamed Wall Street and big bankers for the depression. Although Glass had opposed deposit insurance for years, he changed his mind and urged Roosevelt to accept it. A temporary fund became effective in January 1934, insuring deposits up to $2,500. The fund became permanent in July 1934, and the limit was raised to $5,000. This limit was raised numerous times over the years until reaching the current $250,000. All Federal Reserve member banks on or before July 1st, 1934 were required to become stockholders of the FDIC. No state bank was eligible for membership in the Federal Reserve System until it became a stockholder of the FDIC and became an insured institution with required. One second, guys. Okay, I had a visitor come in and distract me, so I just decided to come check out these um, comments in the chat real quick. So Mr. Egger says they're not accepting my A4V now. I'm in foreclosure trying to do the W4 on my mortgage. I don't know about that W4, bruh. I don't know about all that. Um, I would say step away from the W4 and focus on doing your status correction and getting your birth certificates authenticated. And you might email me for consultation, and I'll help you with some processes that may be able to assist you. Hit the like button. Thank you, Mr. Somebody. Peace and love, Albert Taylor. No problem. Okay, so let me get back to the reading. Let me move these comments out the way so y'all can see the book. All right, so back to the book. Do I have any moderators in the building? I know Mother Vicky is here. Not sure about anyone else. But moving forward, if y'all can moderate the chat for me while I'm reading, that would be lovely. Okay, it says deposit insurance is still viewed as a great success, although the problem of moral hazard and adverse selection came up again during the banking failures of the 1980s. In response to Congress passed legislation that strengthened capital requirements and required banks with less capital to close. Today's fiat paper Today's fiat paper currency says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. How exactly does an American obtain a public debt or a private debt? To understand these questions, a couple of definitions that govern the United States dollar are essential and can provide Americans or America's remedy for eradicating the national public debt. Title 12 U.S. Code 411 states Federal Reserve notes to be issued at the discretion of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System for the purpose of making advances to Federal Reserve banks through the Federal Reserve agents as hereinafter set forth and for no other purpose are authorized. The said note shall be obligations of the United States and shall be receivable by all national and member banks and Federal Reserve banks and for all taxes, customs, and other public dues. They shall be redeemable in lawful money on demand at the Treasury Department of the United States or at any Federal Reserve bank. Title 12 informs everyone who uses Federal Reserve notes that they are obligations of the United States. If Federal Reserve notes are obligations of the United States, shouldn't the Federal Reserve or the U.S. Treasury and its representatives be responsible for taxes, customs, and public dues? Public debt originates from negotiable instruments, and private debts are associated with non negotiable instruments or contracts involving entities not associated with the Federal Reserve, such as private investors. The Uniform Commercial Code defines a negotiable instrument as 2A, except as provided in the subsection C and D. Negotiable instruments means an unconditional promise or order to pay a fixed amount of money with or without interest or other charges described in the promise or order. When observing any denomination of a Federal Reserve note, it displays a fixed amount of money and interest can be applied to the fixed amount or not. 1. Is payable to bearer or to the order at the time it is issued or first come into possession of a holder. Anyone who possesses oh shit Anyone who possesses any denomination of a Federal can Reserve note can exchange the note as soon as it is in the holder's hand or anytime in the future. 3. Does not state other undertaking or instructions by the person promising or ordering payment to do any act in addition to the payment of money, but the promise or order may contain an undertaking or power to give, maintain, or protect collateral to secure payment. 2. An authorization or power to the holder to confess judgment or realize on or dispose of a collateral. Or 3. A waiver of the benefit of any law intended for the advantage or protection of an obligor. Okay, one moment, you all. I hope y'all don't mind me with these pauses, but I have to pause in a minute. All right, I'm back. All right, back to the book. It says the latter explained that any negotiable instrument, fiat paper, bill, aka Federal Reserve notes, has no restrictions. Still, it obligates the exchanger, and the exchanger has no other protection of the law. If a negotiable instrument refers to the public side of the dollar bill, it would mean that a negotiable instrument is a reference to the dollar bill's private side. A non-negotiable instrument is in reference to the dollar bill's private side. Okay. All right. Um, moving forward. Oh goodness. It says B, instrument means a negotiable instrument. C, an order that meets all of the requirements of subsection A except paragraph 1 and otherwise falls within the definition of check in subsection F is a negotiable instrument and a check. D, a promise or order other than a check is not an instrument if at the time it is issued or first comes into possession of a holder. It contains a conspicuous statement, however, expressed to the effect that the promise or order is not negotiable or is not a negotiable, not an instrument governed by this article. All bills before 1933 contained a conspicuous statement stating redeemed in lawful money on demand at the U.S. Treasury or any Federal Reserve Bank. Therefore, they are not negotiable. This is the key to reducing the national public debt. Non negotiable instruments, demand notes, must be exchanged in every commercial transaction to discharge public debt created by negotiable instruments. E, an instrument is a note if it is a promise and is a draft if it is an order. If an instrument falls within the definition of both note and draft, a person entitled to enforce the instrument may treat it as either. F, check means 1, a draft, other than a documentary draft payable on demand and drawn on a bank, or 2, a chaser's check or teller's check. An instrument may be a check even though it is described on its face by another term such as money order. G. Cashier's check means a draft with respect to which the drawer and drawee are the same bank or branches of the same bank. Take, for example, an American writing a check to the Internal Revenue Service for a payment towards a tax bill. The check would be considered a cashier's check because the IRS is the public side of the U.S. Treasury private sector. They are both the same bank on which the same account is drawn or deposited. H. Teller's check means a draft drawn by a bank, 1, on another bank, or 2, payable at or through a bank. Okay, you have I. Traveler's checks means an instrument that 1 is payable on demand, 2 is drawn on the payable at or through a bank, 3 is designated by the terms or term traveler's check or by a substantially similar term, and 5 requires a condition to payment, a counter signature by a person whose specimen signature appears on the instrument, like a wet ink signature. All right, so J, certificate of deposit means an instrument containing an acknowledgement by a bank that a sum of money has been received by the bank and a promise by the bank to repay the sum of money. A certificate of deposit is a note of the bank. UCC 3-104 in negotiable instruments. Take a look at any birth certificate issued from the Vital Statistics or Public Health Department that warehouses birth certificate receipts. It will state a banknote at the bottom of the certificate with a series of numbers. The birth certificate is a certificate of deposit within the U.S. stock market on behalf of international bankers and creditors for the United States. Again, this pertains to U.S. citizens being listed as human capital on the NASDAQ. According to Senator James Traficant Jr. of Ohio on March 17, 1993, addressing the House, Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11. Members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in the world history, the U.S. government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. United States Congressional Record, March 17, 1933, or 1993, Volume 33, page H 1303. All right. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9th, 1933, 48 Statute 1, Public Law 89 through dash 719, declared by President Roosevelt. Being bankrupt and insolvent, the receivers of the United States bankruptcy are international bankers, and United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, IMF. All United States offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status in name only under emergency war powers. This democratic form of government is an established socialist communist order under a new governor for America. This act was instituted by transferring and or placing the office of the Secretary of Treasury to that of the governor of the International Monetary Fund. Public Law 94 564, page 8, section HR 13955 reads in part, the U.S. Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. The Federal Reserve describes what lawful money is and how it is applied to specific case law on its website. It reads, lawful money is a term that is used in the Federal Reserve Act, the act that authorizes the Board of Governors the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve Bank or system to issue Federal Reserve notes. The act states that Federal Reserve notes shall be obligations of the United States and shall be receivable by all national and member banks and Federal Reserve banks and for all taxes, customs, and other public dues. They shall be redeemed in lawful money on demand at the Treasury Department of the United States in the city of Washington, District of Columbia, or at any Federal Reserve Bank. The act did not, however, define the term lawful money, but up until 1913, the only currency issued by the United States was legally recognized as lawful money was various issues of demand notes, subsequently known as old demand notes, and United States notes authorized by Congress during the Civil War. At the time, some currency was not considered legal tender, although it could be used by national banking associations as lawful money reserves. Thus, the term lawful money had a broader meaning than the term legal tender. In 1933, Congress changed the law so that all U.S. coins and currency, including Federal Reserve notes, regardless of when issued, constitutes legal tender for all purposes. Federal and state courts, since they have repeatedly held that Federal Reserve notes are also lawful money. Milam versus U.S. 524 F2D 629 Ninth Circuit 1974 is typical of the federal and state court cases holding that Federal Reserve notes are lawful money. In Milam, the United States Court of Appeals for Ninth Circuit reviewed a judgment denying relief to an individual who sought to redeem a $50 Federal Reserve banknote in lawful money. The United States tendered Milam $50 in Federal Reserve notes, but Milam refused the notes, asserting that lawful money must be gold or silver. The Ninth Circuit noting that this matter had been put to rest by the U.S. Supreme Court nearly a century before in the legal tender cases. Juilliard versus Greenman, 110 U.S. 421, 1884, rejected this assertion of frivolous and affirmed the judgment. What is lawful money? How is it different from legal tender? Um, Look up http colon / federalreserve.gov. Um, that's a lot of spaces for a link. Okay, one moment. I'm gonna grab some water, guys. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Somebody. Let's get those likes up. If we got 9 in the building, we shouldn't have not two likes. Y'all know how I do. You know I like to have the same matching likes for the same amount of views that I have. Like, and also your likes and your shares boosts the algorithm and brings more people to be able to see the video, you guys. So don't be stingy. Hit the like button, okay? Absolutely, Mother Vicky. Yeah, they better stop playing with my likes. YouTube be on some BS. All right, I'm about to get back to the reading in a second, y'all. I paused because my daughter brought me some stir fry, some shrimp stir fry, and I'm hungry. I really was hungry before I started reading, but please forgive me, y'all. Or it could have been ghetto like a couple of other people on their channels I know that like to eat in front of the camera, be all in the mic smacking and stuff like that. I ain't gonna name no names, but y'all should know who I'm talking about. Some of you know who I'm talking about. Okay. All right. Continuing on, y'all. I'm sorry about the delay. It says, taking a closer look in at the Milam case, the Federal Reserve Bank is using to determine what is lawful money and what is not. The Mobley M. Milam appellant versus United States American et al. Apple uh, appellees, um, 524 F2D 629 Ninth Circuit 1974 is a memorandum before Kilkenny and Trask circuit judges and Craig district judge. Appellant has filed a substantial brief and an adequate replay brief and has argued his full share of allowed time insupportable for a demand that his $50 Federal Reserve banknote be redeemed in lawful money of the United States, which he says in effect most must be gold and silver. Appellant refused appellee's tender of an equivalent value in Federal Reserve notes. Appellant's contentions, in our view, were put to rest close to a century ago, in Juilliard versus Greenman, 110 U.S. 421 448, in which it said, under the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States and to issue circulating notes for the money borrowed, its power to define the quality and force of those notes as currency is as broad as the like power over the metallic currency under the power to coin money and to regulate the value thereof. Under the two powers taken together, Congress is authorized to establish a national currency, either in coin or in paper, and it and to make that currency lawful money for all purposes, as regards the national government or private individuals. While we agree that golden eagles, double eagles, and silver dollars are lovely to look at and delightful to hold, we must at the same time recognize that time marches on and that even the time honored silver dollar is no longer available in its last bastion of defense. The brilliant casinos of the House of Chance in the state of Nevada. Appellant is entitled to redeem his note, but not in precious metal. Simply stated, we find his contentions frivolous. Judgment affirmed. The appellant did not realize that the Federal Reserve note has two sides. The Supreme Court informed the appellant that the Constitution is the contract that allows them to determine what is lawful money and what is not. According to contract law, and the terms of the law, both cases mention the Federal Reserve has determined that Federal Reserve notes are lawful money and equal to that of gold and silver as long as they are used as treasury notes on the private side. Depending on the user's knowledge and understanding of the Federal Reserve note, it will be determined its tender of payment. It will determine its tender of payment, whether it is a negotiable instrument on the public debt side with the interest or a non-negotiable demand note on the private side without interest. The dollar bill has two sides. The public side is a Federal Reserve note and the private side is a U.S. Treasury demand note. Up on looking at a dollar bill, it may not be noticeable how contract law applies in this matter or manner. The words Federal Reserve note is located at the top of the bill in a black box, referring to the four corner rule. Um, four corner rule, where was I at? All right. In contract law, the four corner rule simply stipulates that if two parties enters into a written agreement, they cannot use oral or implied agreements in court to contradict the terms of the written agreement. It is the Federal Reserve and the United States Treasury who are the two parties entering into an agreement which removes their responsibilities or liabilities from or for the instrument, transferring its liabilities to whoever uses the instrument as a negotiable instrument. There are two signatures on every denomination of a Federal Reserve note, one for the Treasurer of the United States and the other for the Secretary of Treasury. Keep in mind the Secretary of the Treasury is now the governor for the International Monetary Fund, which is the public side, to the actual U.S. Treasury. Therefore, the treasurer of the United States is the actual treasurer of the private side. Reducing the public debt is obtainable by steering away from Federal Reserve notes as the beginning and end to Americans' daily commerce. The issuer must reserve their rights upon their signature when using lawful money. Although a Federal Reserve note is already signed by the Treasurer of the U.S. and the Secretary of Treasury, Governor of IMF, Americans are not supposed to reserve their rights on the actual Federal Reserve note, but instead on their own demand notes, checks, or whenever using credit cards. Simply exchanging Federal Reserve notes for United States postal money orders or checks issued by any Federal Reserve bank, such as Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, etc., and the conspicuous statement of Title 12 USC 411 that was provided on the United States denominational bills before 1933 in the memo section. The imperative language is redeemed in lawful money or demand at the U.S. Treasury or at any Federal Reserve Bank. The, and provides a signature followed by the words all rights reserved. This is called a restricted endorsement, which removes the obligation from the public and puts the obligation back onto the United States corporation to reduce the national public debt lawfully. The UCC informs everyone that unless the conspicuous statement and or rights are reserved, the person using the instrument is held responsible. A. If a person acting or purporting to act as a representative signs an instrument by signing either the name of the representative person or the name of the signer, the representative person is bound by the signature to the same extent the representative person would be bound if the signature were on a simple contract. If the representative person is bound, the signature of the representative person is the authorized signature of the represented person, and the represented person is liable on the instrument, whether or not identified in the instrument. If the representative signs the name of the representative to an instrument and the signature is an authorized signature of the represented person, the following rules apply. If the form of the signature shows uh, unambiguously that the signature is made on behalf of the represented person who is identified in the instrument, the representative is not liable on the instrument. 3-402, signature by representative. When the Treasurer of the United States and the Secretary of the Treasury sign a negotiable instrument, i.e., dollar bill, which is a contract without restricting their rights, they become responsible for the debt attached to the dollar bill. This is why Title 12 USC 411 states that all forms of money are the United States obligations. Since many Americans are using negotiable instruments, dollar bills, without restricting their rights, restricted endorsement, or on their demand notes, such as money orders or checks, Americans become responsible for the national public debt through the 14th Amendment, fictitious ins legis, as one of the entities called the States United. This is how the government is off the hook from all liability and can tax the U.S. citizen and their children to pay down extreme amounts of debt. All checks linked to any checking account at any bank will have a section for the issuer to sign their name on the provided line. What's interesting is that line is not a line at all. If zoomed in closely, the words authorized representative can be seen, followed by the letters PM, meaning microprint. Anyone who signs their name without restricting their rights becomes responsible for the negotiable instrument they are creating. The national public debt is not entirely the federal government's fault. Unfortunately, it is the fault of the American people. Americans have been given a choice from the federal government to use any Federal Reserve note as a negotiable instrument or a non negotiable demand note. There is no budget plan discussed in political campaigns that will magically reduce the national debt. The national debt in North America has increased more than 21% since President Trump took office in January of 2017. Wow. With the debt to gross domestic product GDP ratio approaching 110% in 2019. Under President Obama's administration, the national debt increased 100%. Wow. From 10 trillion to 20 trillion. As of April 13th, 2020, the US government debt is up to 24.22 trillion. Now, I think it's actually higher than that now at like maybe 28. But you can always look it up on it's called usdebtclock.org. You can go look up the debt there. Um, okay. Y'all hear my grandbaby screaming? Okay. It is codified within Title 31, Money and Finance, subsection 3101, that the public debt is limited. The face amount of obligation issued and the face amount of obligations whose principals and interests are guaranteed by the United States government may be more than, let's see if I can read this number. So we got hundreds, hundreds of thousands, millions, billions, 14.294 trillion. That is 9.926 trillion over the legal public debt limitations. It is easy to understand why so many Americans, beyond political and economists, are starting to pay close attention to this issue. Unfortunately, how the debt level is explained to the public is usually glossed over. Pair this problem with the fact that many individuals don't understand how the national debt level affects them on a daily basis, including their future generations. Regarding banking, most Americans are misinformed of the words of the Federal Reserve Bank, of the workings of the Federal Reserve System, or how money is circulated in the United States economy. It all starts with politicians requesting to be put into office, promising to provide more free benefits to the public than the opposition. The main issue the politician faces is the need for more money to provide the promised free stuff. However, the Senate spends more than its income, which is called deficit spending. To pay for that deficit spending, the Treasury borrows currency by issuing a bond. A bond is a fixed income instrument that represents a loan made by an investor to a borrower. It could be thought of as an IOU, be between the lender and the borrower, that includes the details of the loan and its payments. Treasury bonds are indeed the national public debt, stealing prosperity from the future for spending today. To be paid in the form of taxes, the American people could put an end to it by merely using non negotiable instruments. Once the bond is created, the Treasury would then hold a bond auction, and the world's largest banks complete to buy a large part of the national debt and make a profit by earning interest. That's why yesterday the book told you to go look up your social security number on the GMI utility thingamajig website. Because when you put your social security number in there with the dashes, you'll see all of the different like accounts and businesses that are used to trade on the stock market and stuff with your social security number. And then I also learned the other day that if you put a dash between each number of the social security number, it'll pop up with more. So check that out too, you guys. Okay. All right. It says when people write a check, there must be sufficient funds in our account to cover the check. Yep. But when the Federal Reserve writes a check, there is no bank deposit on which the check is drawn. When the Federal Reserve writes checks, it's is creating money. So why can't we do the same? Which, speaking of, we are going to be learning how to create our own money out of thin air. I got a special guest coming uh, to my Freedom Writers class tonight. Is going to be making a presentation to the community on how we can start generating some funds and generating some income or currency, creating our own currency out of thin air. While we're still going through these processes of correcting our statuses and things like that, we still need currency to be able to operate in this world. Okay, so I know I stopped all of my businesses and stuff like that. I stopped, dealing with the cryptocurrencies and everything to really just focus on this knowledge and is this information. Um, I stopped my businesses the beginning of this year, but I've been doing this research and study longer than that. You guys can check my record. You can see, the videos, the stuff of the community we were going last year and things of that nature. So this is nothing new. Okay, it says the Federal Reserve then delivers the bad checks to the banks. And at this point, currency comes into existence. The big banks then use that currency to buy more bonds at the next treasury auction. What is a check? A check is a check is surprisingly an IOU for cash, requiring the receiver to go to the bank and pick it up. In all actuality, the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve exchange IOUs, enriching the banks as middlemen and indebting the people. This is the origination of all the paper fiat currency. The Treasury then deposits the um, newly created currency to several government branches, and the government then proceeds to deficit spending, which is directed to public works, social services, and wars. The employee of government, hospitals, local school districts, and others then deposit their paychecks into local commercial banks or institutions. This is where things get interesting. When an employee deposits their earnings from labor, they are not depositing into an account to be safely held in trust. Instead, the employee is loaning the bank their earnings hmm, within certain limits. This is crazy. The, uh-oh. What do we do? Uh, I lost my track. Okay. Um, the Federal Reserve then delivers the. Wait, this is not where we was at. Okay. Okay. The banks can do anything with it. Okay, instead the employee is loaning the bank their earnings, and within certain legal limits, the bank can do anything with it to their benefit. This includes purchasing shares in the stock market or the foreign exchange market and loaning them to the public without giving the employee their fair share of profit. Instead, should the employee choose to keep their earnings in a savings account, the bank sees fit only to give you like 0.01% to 1% interest back to the employee. So literally, you've gone and worked your fingers and your body to the bones. And you're giving them money to put in the bank, and they're doing whatever they want to do with it to create more money, right? To create more money or more debt or interest in the system. And they're only giving you 1%, and they keeping the 99%. What the fuck they do that at, y'all? How is that even fair? Absolutely. USDebtClock.org. Yep. Thank you, honey. Okay. So moving on. It says at this point, the Federal Reserve System primary operation comes into play once the employee deposits their earnings. A process called fractional reserve banking is the primary function of all banks in America. In a system in which only a fraction of bank deposits are backed by actual cash or on hand and available for withdrawal. This happens to expand the economy by freeing capital for lending periodically. Loan ratios vary from institutions to institution. Using the Target Inc. Using the Target Inc. employee Christopher Alexander Wellington from the previous chapter as an example to show how earnings affect the economy from a 10% reserve ratio. Suppose Mr. Wellington received a separate bonus check from Target Inc. for $100 to be deposited into Citibank NA. The bank can legally take $90 and loan it out to the public without informing Mr. Wellington. Citibank must hold $10 of his deposit in a reserve account in case Mr. Wellington wants to come back to make a withdrawal. Of course, his withdrawal of the entire $100 comes from a pool of others' 10% reserves. And now, guess what, you guys? The reserves are no longer 10%. The banks are insolvent. They're not holding any reserves. They're not holding whatsoever any reserves. So when you put your money in the bank, they're lending out 100% of it. And that started, I think, last year, maybe the year before. Um, Mr. Wellington's bank account statement remained a total of $100 as an available balance because the bank created $100 IOU as a credit in its place. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, commercial banks create checkbook money whenever they grant a loan only by adding a new deposit dollar in accounts on their books in exchange for a borrower's IOU. Federal Reserve Bank of New York. I bet you thought, page 19. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Under this example, Mr. Wellington's deposit of $100 allows Citibank to create an additional 10% bank credit of $90 and therefore is $190 in existence. So people take out loans from the bank to buy a house, a car, have operating money for a business plan, or consolidate debt. A borrower who wishes to buy a car then takes out a loan of $90 from the same bank that was created as bank credit from Mr. Wellington's account and pays the seller for the car. Then the seller deposits the $90 into Mr. Wells Fargo's account, and their bank then loans out 90% of that deposit, creating another set of deposit of bank credits. So y'all see how this cycle goes, which would be $81 for a total of $271 in existence. This process repeats and repeats up to $1,000 bank credit and backed by just $100 of value cash. As mentioned before, some reserve ratios are 10%, 3%, and some are 0%. This is where the vast majority of the currency supply in America comes from. In fact, 92 to 96% of all currency in existence is created not by the government but within banks. The result of this currency expansion by the banks is far higher than this example. This tremendous expansion of currency causes the everyday prices of goods and services to act as a sponge on this never ending expanding supply. The more currency circulating in existence, the more prices rise to use all of the currency equally. This is where inflation is derived. Rising prices are nearly a symptom. Sadly, this is the entire makeup of America's supply. The U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve exchange IOUs, printing 4% to 8% of the money into existence, and the other 92 to 96% is nothing but numbers typed into a computer by the banks and bank credits. A lot of people don't believe that or understand it, but it's the facts. Unfortunately, the American people who work for that currency supply trading moments of their lives hour by hour, day by day, year by year in exchange for numbers someone printed on a pieces of paper or typed into a computer. In the United States, neither paper currency nor deposits have value as commodities. Intrinsically, a dollar bill is just a piece of paper. Deposits merely book entries. Coins do have some intrinsic value as metal, but generally far less than their face value. What then makes these instruments, checks, paper monies, and coins acceptable at face value in payment of all debts and for other monetary uses? Mainly, it is the confidence people have that they will be able to exchange such money for other financial assets and for real goods and services whenever they choose to do so. Modern Money Mechanics, a workbook on bank reserves and deposit expansion, Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. And we definitely got to read that book, Modern Money Mechanics. So I do have the PDF for that. So we'll eventually get to that one too, because that's something I've been putting off. Okay, so it says the numbers printed or typed now represent America's blood, sweat, tears, labor, ideas, and talents so that they can save money of those numbers and pay the tax collector known as the Internal Revenue Service. The IRS then delivers the taxes over to the U.S. Treasury so that the Treasury can pay the principal and interest on the bonds that the Federal Reserve bought with a check drawn on an account with nothing in it. Much of the taxes collected are used for schools, public roads, and services, but to pay interest on bonds that the Federal Reserve. Hold on, let me go back. Much of the taxes collected are not used for schools, public roads, and services, but to pay interest on bonds that the Federal Reserve bought with the check drawn on an account with nothing in it. Is the Federal Reserve committing fraud on the American people, or are the American people unknowingly allowing the Federal Reserve to play their game? Before the establishment of the Federal Reserve, there was no need for personal income tax. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913, and in that very same year, the Constitution was amended to allow income tax stemming from Section 5 of the 14th Amendment. How many hours and dollars were siphoned away from Americans into the hands of the owners of the Federal Reserve? The Federal Reserve Bank is not a federal entity at all. It has stockholders. A stockholder is a share of stock representing a percentage of ownership in a corporation. Therefore, the stockholders are the owners of that corporation. The Federal Reserve is a private corporation with owners, according to their website, which says Appendix B, Dividend B1, payment of dividends from surplus. After all necessary expenses of a Federal Reserve Bank have been paid or provided for, the stockholders shall be entitled to receive an annual dividend of 6 per centum on the paid-in capital stock, which dividend shall be cumulative. Federal Reserve Act, Section 7, Division of Earnings. The American people now all too the American people know all too well that whenever the issue of reducing the national debt or talk of the debt ceiling, the federal government always prints more money and raises taxes to settle the enormous debt. Here's why talk of the debt ceiling is delusional. If the federal government prints the very first dollar into existence, and that is the only dollar that exists, but the government promises to pay it back plus another dollar's worth of interest, where does the government get the second dollar to pay interest? The answer is that the government will borrow the second dollar into existence and promise to pay it back with interest. Now there are $2 that exist, but $4 is owed, and so on, leading to neither enough currency to pay the debt at least or at last, not with this method. The only way to stop increasing the national public debt created by negotiable instruments is by issuing lawful private money, also known as non-negotiable instruments. But to reduce the current national debt is entirely different. Title 31, Money and Finance, the U.S. currency informs the American people, A, to provide the people of the United States with an opportunity to make gifts to the United States government to be used to reduce the public debt. The Secretary of the Treasury may accept for the government a gift of A, money made only on the condition that it be used to reduce the public debt. An obligation of the government included in the public debt made only on the condition that the obligation be canceled and retired and reissued. Title 31 USC 3113, accepting gifts. To discharge the public debt, such as student loans, bank loans, mortgages, etc., the Secretary of Treasury has informed the public of how to successfully aid the government in debt reduction. Non-negotiable demand notes cancel out negotiable instruments by providing the words of Title 12 USC 411. There must also include the words of Section A of Title 31 USC 3113 on the American people's demand notes. For example, suppose the Target Inc. Employee Christopher Allen Wellington has an auto loan for $16,500 and a monthly payment of $374.47 with Ford Motor Credit. Mr. Wellington has had this loan for 3 years now and has decided to cancel the obligation of interest affecting the overall national economic health. The first thing Mr. Wellington must do is understand the laws of making conspicuous statements on negotiable instruments. This rule comes from the Uniform Commercial Code, known as accord and satisfaction by use of instrument. Dang. The universe, let me pause right there because the universe is so dang blastic amazing to me, y'all. I swear I was just um consulting with someone yesterday, and I'm not really familiar with I've heard of it, accord and satisfaction terms, or how to apply it. I don't know, or how to use it, but I was able to assist someone yesterday with using those terms to be able to pay off this same exact issue that we're talking about, a car note. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I'm looking forward to hearing his results. Hopefully it works out for them. I know it will. This is confirmation right here. Unless subsection C applies, the claim is discharged if the person against whom the claim is asserted proves that the instrument or accompanying written communication contained a conspicuous statement to the effect that the instrument was tendered as full satisfaction of the claim. UCC 3-311B. Every state has encoded the UCC rule into its state code. Being that Mr. Wellington is a Californian national, the state code for accord and satisfaction is CACIB code, chapter 4, section 1526. Okay, so you guys want to look up those codes in your state. Okay. So I might have to send him that message to look up the code in his own state, okay? It says A, where a claim is disputed or unliquidated and a check or draft is tendered by the debtor in settlement thereof, in full discharge of the claim, and the words payment in full or other words of similar meaning are notated on the check or draft, the acceptance of the check or draft does not constitute an accord or satisfaction in if the creditor protests against accepting the tender in full payment by striking out the otherwise delete or otherwise deleting the notation, or if the acceptance of the check or draft was inadvertent or without knowledge of the notation. B. Notwithstanding subdivision A, the acceptance of a check or draft constitutes an accord and satisfaction if a check or draft is tendered pursuant to a composition or extension agreement between a debtor and its creditor, and pursuant to that composition of the extension agreement, all creditors of the same class are accorded similar treatment, and the creditor receives the check or draft with knowledge of the restriction. A creditor shall be conclusively presumed to have knowledge of the restriction if a creditor either 1. Has previous to the receipt of the check or draft executed a written consent to the composition or extension agreement. 2. Has been given not less than 15 days nor more than 90 days prior to the receipt of the check or draft notice in writing that a check or draft will be tendered with a restrictive endorsement, and that the acceptance and cashing of the check or draft will constitute an accord and satisfaction. Okay. Notwithstanding subdivision A, Notwithstanding subdivision A, the acceptance of a check or draft by a creditor constitutes an accord and satisfaction when a check or draft is issued pursuant to or in conjunction with a release of a claim. For the purpose of paragraph 2 of subdivision B, mailing the notice by first class mail, postage prepaid, addressed to the address shown for the creditor on the debtor's book, or such other addresses as the creditor may designate in writing, constitutes notice. According to the law mentioned above, Mr. Wellington first needs to provide the Ford Motor Company a certified mail notice with an attached proof of service made attention to the executive officer. The notice should inform their office will receive a check or draft with a restrictive endorsement, not less than 15 days or not more than 90 days from the date of the receipt of the notice. Once 15 days has passed and Mr. Wellington has received a return certified mail receipt with either no response from Ford Motor Company or a positive confirmation, he may begin to provide his non-negotiable demand note with a restrictive endorsement. Mr. Wellington should use a United States postal money order because of the post office's contractual relationship with the United States Treasury via the Postmaster General. The post office is a closet form of lawful money, from the U.S. Treasury that Americans have available. Per Title 39 of the United States Code Book of all officers and employees are constitutional officers. Before entering upon their duties and before receiving any salary, all officers and employees of the Postal Service shall take and subscribe the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear and affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of which I am not about to enter. Okay. I'm about to enter. Title 39 USC 1011, Oath of Office, Public Law 91 through dash 375, August 12, 1970, 84 Statute 733. Title 39 USC 2006, the relationship between the Treasury and the Post Office or the Postal Services reads. C. Notwithstanding Section 2005 D5 or 2011 E4E of this title, obligations issued by the Postal Service shall be obligations of the government of the United States, and payment of principal and interest thereon shall be fully guaranteed by the government of the United States. Such guarantee by expressed on the face. I'm sorry, such guarantee being expressed on the face thereof, if and to the extent that the Postal Service, requests the Secretary of Treasury to pledge the full faith and credit of the government of the United States for the payment of principal and interest thereon, and two, the Secretary is in discretion in his discretion determines that it would be in the public interest to do so. Mr. Wellington has purchased a United States postal money order in the amount equal to his monthly car payment of $378.47. The pay to the order would state Ford Motor Company with its address right below the company name. The memo section is the most crucial, converting the pre-made negotiable instrument to a non-negotiable demand. The memo should have the following exact language: payment in full for the reduction of public debt account number. So you put your account number there, i.e., car loan account number, redeemed in lawful money on demand at the U.S. Treasury or at any Federal Reserve Bank. Mr. Wellington would then provide his name, followed by the words "all rights reserved," and provides his address right below. The next step is to properly register the demand note as an extension to Mr. Wellington's UCC 1 financing statement as explained in Chapter 3, Existence of Life. The existence of the Uniform Commercial Code is the Form UCC 3 Financing Statement Amendment. Mr. Wellington would provide an initial UCC financing statement file number from the Secretary of State's office in Box 1A. Box 3, the option for continuation would be checked. Any secure party or record would be checked in Box 5, as it continuing as this continuing statement affects the express trust. In Box 8, the third option would be checked as giving an entire restated collateral description. Mr. Wellington would provide the full automobile details, the full Ford Motor Company, the full Ford Motor Company account details, including contract sales date and full description of the demand note. The Heinz Wolfgang Express Trust would be provided in Box 9A for the secure party origination name. The UCC 3 must be directed to the Secretary of State for recording. Okay. A certified copy of both the UCC 1 and 3 should be obtained from the Secretary of State, and Mr. Wellington is now prepared to delegate discharge and instructions to the United States Postmaster General. Both UCC forms with the actual USPS money order and a certified copy of the Declaration of Express Trust, further explained in the upcoming chapters. And lastly, an introduction trustee letter made attention to the Postmaster General with the IRS form WABEN when would complete Mr. Wellington's accord and satisfaction discharge packet. Wow. Neat. Neat, neat, neat. The WA bin will further be explained as well. The introductory letter should provide brief detail introducing the foreign express trust as well as advising the Postmaster General to register the demand note as a treasury note with the Secretary of the U.S. Treasury Department and forward the demand note to the Ford Motor Credit Company in respect to Title 31 USC 3113, accepting gifts. The Chief Executive Officer of the Board of Governors of the United States Postal Service can receive the packet at 475 LaEffant Plaza, Southwest Washington, D.C. That's it. Once Mr. Wellington sends the payment to Ford Motor Credit Company and they have cashed the money order, his $16,500 obligation of the United States has been canceled, reducing the national debt minus $16,500, and would then receive a 1099-C from the lender. The Heinz Wolfgang Express Trust must settle the amount reported on the 1099-C by using the same method or sending an explanatory statement to the IRS stating that the entity is not required to file nor pay taxes. The IRS will definitely need the trust to cancel the amount provided in the informational 1099-C to clear their books, or else it will be considered as an income to Mr. Wellington's Social Security account. A mortgage or credit card payment would operate just the same. In the event that one is in the middle of purchasing an automobile using an installment sales contract or at the closing table regarding real estate, a restrictive endorsement is still required to help reduce the national public debt. An installment sales contract and mortgage promissory note are obligations of the United States just waiting to be circulated from one party to another as a negotiable instrument. Adding the language redeemed and lawful money on demand at the U.S. Treasury or at any Federal Reserve Bank with a signature followed by the words "all rights reserved" will most assuredly prevent a negotiable instrument. Damn, y'all better screenshot that. Let's go get what we want. So it says redeemed and lawful money on demand at the U.S. Treasury or at any Federal Reserve Bank with, and then you put your signature, and then underneath your signature, or you want to write next to it, all rights reserved. That's what's up. If all Americans proceeded to issue demand notes in all areas of commercial transactions with the intent to discharge the public debt to stop assuming liability for the use of Federal Reserve notes, the national debt could be eradicated in no time at all. The Federal Reserve note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. All paper fiat currency bills have two sides, a public side and a private side, from the use of non-negotiable instruments that have no interest but act as lawful money and or treasury notes. Besides, the United States Postal Service offering Americans the best access to the United States Treasury, there is also the United States coin. The majority are led to believe that the Federal Reserve has all power to create money, when indeed all power they have is to print Federal Reserve notes, but never to coin money. Minting coin has always been the responsibility of the United States Treasury per the Constitution. Despite the smallest amount of silver, gold, and copper in the current U.S. coin, it will always hold more value than a Federal Reserve note. An article entitled Contracts Payable in Gold by George Cyrus Thorpe. Make sure y'all get a screenshot of that or write that down. So you can look up that article showing the legal effect of agreements to pay in gold. Senate Resolution number 62, April 17th, 1933, quotes, the laws of the United States recognize two kinds of money, namely coin and paper. The term dollars and species means gold or silver coins, or coined dollars. Dollars in currency means dollars in notes or any paper money current in the community. Treblecock versus Wilson, 1872, 12, Wall Street, 687. Okay, as of today, the current median income is $34,466 in North America, which is $2,872.17 per month that the average household is bringing in to support their families. Back in 1913, the gold ratio was just 29.01, and today the gold dollar is still measured by the same gold dollar value, which was used in 1849 and 1889, weighing in at 1.672 gram or 0.04837 troy ounces. $1 is equal to $91.91. So if gold and silver are the standards for real tangible money that will never lose its value in contrast to paper fiat money. And if the average family brings in $2,872.17 fiat per month, then in actuality, an average family truly brings in just 300, I'm sorry, $31.25 of gold per month. As stated before, if all Americans proceeded to issue demand notes in all areas of commercial transactions with the intent to discharge the debt to stop assuming liability for the use of Federal Reserve notes, the national debt could be eradicated in no time at all. One final thought in relation to the national public debt, which is highly talked about every year, especially in the year 2020, with the widespread of the global economic pandemic, which was the pandemic known as COVID-19. Is this the name of the U.S. citizen? Is that the name of the U.S. citizen, U.S. resident, or legal permanent resident? And is Social Security number or ITIN creates and its social security number or ITIN creates the securities needed for the federal government to then package those securities into bonds to be sold around the world to investors. All U.S. citizens have been naturalized via the birth certificate. All birth certificates have a listed registrar or assessor clerk. And according to Title 8 USC 1101A7, the term clerk of court means a clerk of naturalization court of a naturalization court. As the bonds are sold, the federal government cannot get away with 100% of fraud, earning a profit from the U.S. citizens' labor. Therefore, the government gives a portion of the securities to its citizens on the private side, called the CAFR funds, and given to the citizens on the public side via old age insurance workers compensation, Social Security insurance, 401ks, Medi-Cal, Medicare, and other means of public insurance. Every created Social Security goes into the CAFR accounts in the county and continues to grow. Whenever there's talk about the debt ceiling or debt clock in New York City, it is money, 27 trillion, that is owed to nationals on the private side of the ledger, and 27 trillion of dischargeable debt on the public side. The private side is also inheritance funds that are uncollectible unless the national operates completely in trust in the name of their forefathers and foremothers of the Mahometan nation, which means the national is descendable, who is able to collect what is rightfully theirs. Only nationals of an express trust, aka natural person, can own properly fully protected by the United States Constitution contract clause. All right. Section 1, the rights protected by the Constitution of the United States are the rights of natural persons only. Artificial entities such as corporations, limited liability companies, and other entities established by the laws of any state, the United States, and any foreign state shall have no right under the Constitution and are subject to regulation by the people through federal, state, or local law. The privileges of artificial entities shall be determined by the people through federal, state, or local law and shall not be construed to be inherited or alienable. 116th Congress, First Session, HJ Resolution 48, February 22, 2019. All right, guys, let's check y'all out in the chat. I think I'm going to end there for today. We've been reading for an hour and a half. So I'll come back tomorrow and finish chapter 6 most definitely. You're still doing an awesome job. All right, thank you, honey bunny. I don't appreciate the fact the government is making debt and we the people have to pay. Exactly, Mother Vicky. That's definitely what happened. That's definitely what's happening. So we're gonna come back tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, and finish get started with chapter 6. We'll go over credit secrets, investing, and banking. If y'all really enjoyed today's reading, drop a 9 in the chat for me. And also, if you want to make a donation of any amount, you can check the description area of this video. And I have information there where you can be able to make a donation, or you can purchase a book from my book ideas list on Amazon, and then I'll get a percentage of those sales. So however you want to do it is up to you, but it all is greatly appreciated. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say I love you and thank you all for tuning in today. I'll definitely be back tomorrow. If it is meant for me to come back tomorrow, more than likely I'll be here, because I control my destiny. So I'll be back tomorrow, y'all, with more content from the 0%. Let's see, we got like, how many more pages we got left over here? We got 157, so we got about 100 and something more pages left. We're doing pretty good, I must say. So I'm very satisfied. So I thank y'all again for tuning in. Thank y'all for the 9s. Thank y'all. I could get more than that though. We got 10 people watching. Don't y'all be lazy. Don't y'all be stingy with them thumbs up. If you can't do nothing else, you can definitely like my videos. I don't get monetized or any of those things, but you can at least boost the algorithm so that we can continue to wake our people up. And thank you, Hathor Sekmet. And I saw you on last night's call. So thank you for joining my video today and checking me out. What was I getting ready to say? I don't even know. But I'm going to go ahead and end this video, guys. Appreciate your time and love. I'll see y'all tomorrow around the same time, more than likely, if not earlier. And make sure y'all hit me up if you want to join Freedom Riders. Freedom Riders is the best place to be. I could show you screenshots of comments of people saying they love Freedom Riders. So I'm just happy and grateful that the universe allowed me to open Freedom Riders back up and try it one more time. Give my people another chance to get it right. Because last year I was trying to help y'all. But y'all don't, it's like y'all don't want to build and grow together. Everybody want to be chiefs. Or everybody want to be lazy brain and don't want to do the work. And the only way that anything will ever get fixed is if we do the work. We have a Zoom tonight. Absolutely, Miss Vicky. We have a special guest. I told you guys about the special guest that will be at tonight's class. So yes, we will be having a Zoom. I'll post that today. I'll post that in the chat. There was no Zoom yesterday, Mother Vicky, but we will definitely have one today. I think what you missed was Grow Show and No. That was Sunday. Yeah, you weren't present that day. You were definitely missed. Your presence were missed. So with that being said, you all, thank you for your time. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace and love.